to me. But I don't want to call myself a problem solver, because then all of a sudden problems will present themselves to me to solve. That is not my title in this life. I am here to be the living solution, in that I'm allowing all of the evolutionary process of my growth from the different spaces and places from which it comes to end up in the cocktail of my life. And I want the cocktail of my life to be very, very, very intoxicating. Like, I want to be a holy bartender. I want to be the one who's able to be a mixologist, to take all of these things that I've endured and dealt with and the things that I've seen fall apart in my life, and instead of believing that they're destruction, see them as opportunities for transformation. So last week we dove into dissolution. We talked about the sacred unraveling. We talked about a holy undoing. We talked about the courage that it takes to let our carefully curated identities melt. Because so many of us are so attached to who we believe we are. And not for the sake of destruction are we letting these things dissolve, but for the sake of transformation. Somebody say, I will let it all dissolve for the sake of transformation. I've used this quote many times over the last several weeks, and that is that I've said to us, we're afraid of transformation. We want to patch up who we've been, but we don't want to transform, because the fear of the ego is that if you transform, it's not going to know how to control the new you. And so it rears up its ugly head because there's a new thought. Something different doesn't mean dangerous. Different means evolving. It means you're changing and you're shifting. And when the shift hits the fan, we get a little freaked out about it. But the reality is that we're not here to stop the shift. We're here to shape the shift. We're here to take the shift that shows up in our life and be able to shape it, because energy cannot be created or destroyed, but it can be harnessed, it can be aimed, and it can be shaped. And I'm getting myself in shape. So this week we look at a new phase, or the next phase of this sacred chemistry, and I'm calling it solution and resolution. In other words, this is where alchemy starts to get personal. Somebody say, oh, he's about to get personal. This is where the alchemy part starts to get personal, because I'm only responsible for my life and its unfolding. I'm not responsible for your life. Even as a spiritual leader, there are many pastors in pulpits today that believe that they're responsible for all of their congregants' lives and how they live, because many of them are afraid of hell and they're hoping that everybody gets to go to heaven. You're looking at a minister who stopped believing in hell, and hell stopped showing up in my life. I stopped believing the devil, and the devil stopped knocking on my door. I started believing in the truth of my divine nature, and I started living in heaven. Somebody say, I get to live in heaven right here, right now. But when we look at the wounding of our life, we look at the pain of our life, we look at the things that have fallen apart in our life. I know I'm talking to real people that are looking to expand a real God in your life. When you've gone through that divorce, it doesn't feel good. When you go through that being fired or losing a job that you thought was going to bring you your stability, it does not feel good. When you go through the rejection of your loved ones because they can't understand how you're unfolding spiritually, when you go through spiritual awakening, sometimes you go through a family shaking. And some people can't understand why you're expanding or why you think so differently. It feels like pain, but Rumi said this: the wound is the place where the light enters you. That wound that you experience, most of our transformations, I can look back over my life, and when I look back over my life, I see that it seems like that real transformation doesn't begin on the mountaintop when we feel high, when we feel all love and light and all gushy and ushy. It seems to happen through the mud, through the ache, and through the pain. It's in the place